how did the belief in immortality of the soul come into the Christian church? Fascinating story. Here's what William Gladstone, at one time Prime Minister of Great Britain, had to say. The pagan doctrine of the immortality of the human soul crept into the back door of the church. The pagan doctrine of immortality of the human soul crept into the back door of the church. What's he talking about? Here's what he's talking about. Alexander the Great, with the conquests of the ancient world, Pan-Hellenism. Here's what Kittel has to say. Psyche becomes a master concept in the 6th century BC. That's the Greek word for soul, by the way. The psyche in the underworld assures continuity between this world and the next. The psyche, then, is the epitome of the individual. The soma, that's the body, comes to be seen as the sema, the tomb of the soul. Transmigration of the soul also finds supporters, such as Pythagoras. After 500 BC, the psyche represents the essential core embracing thought, will, and emotion and not sharing the body's dissolution. Wow. Sounds familiar, huh? Okay. In popular thinking, the psyche is the impalpable essential core of a person, the agent of thought, will, and emotion, the quintessence of human life. The soul embraces the conscience. So that's not of Christian origin, that's of pagan Greek origin. Aha, the truth comes out. Wow. Alexander spread this teaching through the ancient world, as we said, through Pan-Hellenism, spreading Greek culture and religion throughout the ancient world. All right. It crept into Judaism. 150 BC, the Hellenistic philosophy of immortality of the soul was introduced into the Jewish community. Judaism was divided on this issue when Jesus came. The parable of the rich man and Lazarus was a story from Hellenistic Judaism, as we'll see in our next study. And it crept into Roman society, of course, this whole doctrine. Now here's what happened. As the Latin Christians came into the church from paganism, some brought with them their Hellenistic ideas. In 188 AD, Athenagoras was the first Christian father to use the word immortal soul. He taught that the soul is immortal and imperishable. In the 3rd century AD, Tertullian further developed the doctrine and taught eternal torment, that the sacred fire never consumes, but renews as it burns. Greco-Roman philosophy became integrated into the Christian church during the Middle Ages through the work of this man, Thomas Aquinas, Summa Theologica. That is how it came into the Christian church, through bringing pagan philosophy into the Christian church. And into Western civilization, because even today we have the influence of Greco-Roman architecture, thought, philosophy, and religion in our culture. Okay, let's summarize. Satan deceived Eve and told her that she was immortal. Today, Satan deceives millions and tells them that they are part of them, are immortal. He lies. Only God is immortal. Quote, "It is He alone who has immortality." 1 Timothy 6, verse 16. He alone, God alone, has immortality. Friends, we don't have it. Only God has it. Okay, well, what about near-death experiences? We've all read about that, probably. Books on near-death experiences have catapulted to bestseller status. Books like Journey into the Light years ago, and other books. There are some beautiful stories that we hear from people that have been near death. Perhaps they're in the hospital, and somewhere in the process, their heart stops and they are revived later. But so many times they have these wonderful stories of this warm, bright light that they saw. They saw an angel, they saw Jesus, but they came back. Now, what about that? Here's what I think. Jesus is the Good Shepherd. Jesus cares about his people. Death is the most frightening experience a person can go through, perhaps. But here's what Jesus says. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Psalm 23, verse 4. So Jesus is there to comfort his people as they go through the valley of the shadow. Jesus is there to comfort them. Yes, he wants them to know that they're not alone, that he's with them, that he loves them, that he has not abandoned them, that he will save them. A wonderful truth there, I believe. The Bible says, precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints. Psalms 116, verse 15. Jesus cares about his people. And we're glad for that, aren't we? But what about out-of-body experiences? Now that's a horse of another color. Oh, you know what that's like, right? But the Bible says, and as it is appointed unto men once to die, but after this the judgment. Hebrews 9, verse 27. How many times to die? Once to die. But the devil said, you shall not surely die. No, you'll keep on living. All right. The Bible also warns us that there are counterfeits. Revelation 16, verse 14, they are the spirits of devils working miracles. Notice some examples of experiences people have had, out-of-body experiences. This is none other than Timothy Leary back in the 60s. After eating certain Mexican mushrooms, I realized that I had died, that I, Timothy Leary, the Timothy Leary game was gone. I could look back and see my body in bed. Caused by what? Eating certain Mexican mushrooms. Aldous Huxley took mescaline, wrote, my body seemed to have disassociated itself almost completely from my mind. It was odd, of course, to feel that I was not the same as these arms and legs out there, caused by taking mescaline. Carbon dioxide. Dr. Ladislaus Medina administered 30% carbon dioxide and 70% oxygen to a subject. Afterward, the subject stated, I felt as though I was looking down at myself, as though I was way out here in space. I felt sort of separated. The cause? Carbon dioxide. And a recent study suggests that these out-of-body and near-death experiences may be influenced by a portion of the brain misfiring under stress. The Swiss researchers mapped the brain activity of a 43-year-old woman who'd been experiencing seizures for 11 years. They implanted electrodes to stimulate portions of her brain's right temporal lobe. When electrical stimulation was applied, the patient reported seeing herself lying in bed from above, but I only see my legs and lower trunk. She also described herself as floating near the ceiling. Wow, isn't that something? Electrical stimulation, the brain misfiring under stress, or perhaps reduced oxygen, for example. Okay, good enough.